Is hypergamy on the decline?
So there is some evidence for this, which I think is kind of inevitable. So hypergamy is women's tendencies to mate with an equal or higher status kind of mate. And I think it's inevitable as more and more women become highly educated and killing it in the workplace that they will begin to have to mate down. And some evolutionary kind of based scholars disagree with me on the fact that there is a mating crisis at all. And they point to some of this evidence as evidence that there is no mating crisis, nothing to worry about. But even the authors of that study that showed that hypergamy is in decline said that they can't speak to the perceived difficulty for women in finding mates that they have to mate down with. So it doesn't appear that women are actually that happy.
What does that mean?
So it doesn't appear that women are actually that happy about having to mate down. So there's some evidence for this that female infidelity is kind of on the rise in lockstep with hypergamy. So as hypergamy is in decline, female infidelity, not male, goes up. Male infidelity has remained pretty stable over the last 50 or so years, but female infidelity has increased by 40% over the last half century. And perhaps that's just an artifact of them occupying more high status positions, being around more high status men, maybe increased anonymity with dating apps and things like that.
Lower partner satisfaction as well, probably.
Yeah, no longer reliant on, no longer having to worry about what would happen if they did get divorced. Another troubling finding from this consequence of the decline in hypergamy is that a recent study of 21,000 women in 27 EU countries found that women who were higher educated or earning more than their partners were more likely to report all types of intimate partner violence. And that makes sense from an evolutionary point of view because men are most likely to kind of inflict costs on their partner when they feel like they might be about to lose them. So if their partner is earning more than them and is around more high status men, they're getting that cue and they'll maybe shift to, because when you don't have much benefit to provide, you change to a cost inflicting mate retention strategy. So that might be what's happening there. So it's not like, oh, hypergamy is in decline. That's nothing to worry about. There's downstream consequences of this. And, the mating crisis overall has broader consequences too, because you might have heard of something called young male syndrome. Chris, have you heard of that?
That's the proliferation of childless, partnerless men roaming the streets in gangs and graffitiing everywhere and kicking grannies and stuff.
Right. So if you have a surplus population of unpartnered young men in any society, cross-culturally, cross-historically, they've always been extremely disruptive. And, due to elevated risk-taking and status-striving kind of behaviors. So, that this kind of mating crisis is dangerous on a bigger level because that's what we're leaning towards. And actually, we would, although there is a level of threat from incel violence, I feel like it's overemphasized in the media and a bit alarmist. But theoretically, we should expect that incels represent a very dangerous portion of society. But what might be happening there is that their status striving mechanisms are maybe hijacked just by online worlds, and they're status striving in forums or shit posting on the internet and getting kind of counterfeit fitness cues from pornography that you're an evolutionary success if you stay at home jerking off to the stimulus of the sex on the screen. That's an idea put forward in a great article by Diana Fleischman called Uncanny Vulvas, a play on the Uncanny Valley. It's a really good read.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that the young male syndrome, which is this phenomenon where lots of men without partners tends to be destabilizing for society, could perhaps be being dampened down by online status, by porn, all of these things that are kind of simulacrums of cues that they would have previously been super aggressive about, but they're kind of being sedated into a more domicile version of this, right?
Yeah, it's like a pacifier,
yes.
Pacifying effect. That, but yeah, you mentioned there, you had Joe Henrik on the podcast before, right?
Indeed.
Yeah, so he wrote a great paper called The Puzzle of Monogamous Marriage, and he talks about how cultures that began to practice monogamy flourished more than those that stuck with polygyny, which 83% of human societies that there ever has been or have ever been studied have been preferentially polygynous. And Joe Henrik talks about it as in monogamy's main cultural advantage is the egalitarian distribution of women. And that's a lot of listeners might get mad at me talking about women as a resource, but they're a reproductive resource.
It's sexual distribution strategy, man. Like if man number 1 gets woman number 1 to number 10, and then man number 2 takes woman number 11 to 20, after a while, you can see how you capture a lot of the market. Where if it's 1 to 1, 2 to 2, 3 to 3, 4 to 4, all the way along, it keeps more people more happy. And going back to what you said before about how cultural preferences mediate sexual desire or mediate mating preferences, right? Like what's held up in the culture as something. And you could see Disney movies almost as reinforcing this back in the day. You know, you find the true love, you go through challenges, there are things that try to tempt you away, and so on and so forth. To see it as, to simply call Disney movies a patriarchal presupposition, cis heteronormatively telling women about how they're supposed to stay under the boot of men, you go, a lot of what was happening with constraining sexual desire previously and having one man to one woman wasn't just constraining female sexual desire, it was constraining male sexual desire as well. It was making sure that men reached the threshold that they needed to in order to be worthy of having a woman. If a woman gives away sex too freely, men will meet that criteria. And if the criteria and the bar is set unbelievably low, men will do what's asked of them, which is not very much. What's happening, people? If you enjoyed that, then press here for the full, unedited episode. And don't forget to subscribe. Peace.